Mr. Michael Keel here with me today. Michael, how you doing?
Doing very well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great. So excited to talk to you finally, just unload all the questions. Um, so you are the pool's brother, Patrick Keel, correct?
Yes, I am a little brother.
Little brother. Awesome. Okay. And I think just to I kind of wanted to start by talking about some of these amazing pictures you sent me, because I think they can kind of tell us a little bit more about Patrick's background with music. There's one you sent of him at a drum set. So
Yes.
did he start out as a drummer? Was that his main instrument?
No.
Oh.
Patrick started out like a lot of people in his era. Beatles, 1964, Ed Sullivan,
Uh-huh.
game changer. And he attempted being a frontman vocalist. He attempted being a guitarist. Neither of those really gained traction. So he became a DJ, actually was a DJ for KNUS when they first opened up in Dallas in the 60s. They were an album station. And then I got shipped off to military school. I was actually a drummer starting in the third grade and was playing in a garage band by fifth grade, paid gigs by sixth grade. And then I got caught smoking cigarettes and kissing girls and lying about it. So I got sent to military school.
Ooh.
And Patrick ended up acquiring my drums through a swap that our grandparents made. They gave him my drums, and I got a little car to start off driving at the age of 16. So I thought it was a fair trade, and off he went. So the
Wow.
picture you're talking about was when he was playing with a band called Zeus uh, in Austin. I think I sent you one of their promo shots as well.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
okay. That's
that's the
amazing.
band I remember him playing with the most because I was going to school in San Marcos, and I'd go up to Austin for some of his gigs and dance with all the band members' girlfriends and stuff like that, and had a great time.
Love it. What when did okay, so yeah, Zeus, that's a really cool picture too. Do you know who did any of the designing for some of these posters? Do you remember recall?
I have no
No
idea.
idea. Do you know who were there any notable Austin musicians that were in Zeus?
No, the only one of any note was a gentleman named David Denard. David was a friend of Patrick's, his best friend from the 60s onward. David played in a number of bands with Patrick, including Zeus and Good Question. And then David was Patrick's partner with Dragon Street Records here in Dallas in the 80s.
Okay, awesome. Um, and so good question. There's another photo here, good question. And so this has a notable musician in it, right?
Yeah, a guy named Chris Geppert. I actually remember meeting Chris at Patrick's house in Austin and getting to play some James Taylor tunes with him because I kind of played with the guitar a little bit and singing harmonies with him, not having a clue as to where he would end up. But quite a quite an excellent vocalist, as we all know.
Yeah, that's Christopher Cross. Um,
Yes, that's what he became as a performing. And actually, the night I was there was one of the last times Patrick and Chris spoke. Um,
wow.
Chris was had been offered a contract with Warner Brothers, and Patrick was strongly counseling against signing it because, as Patrick said, when they sign you to these contracts, they own your lifetime catalog, and they'll cherry pick it, and they'll have a marvelous record out of it, and then they'll say, okay, give us a new album. You got 12 months. And that was one of Patrick's explanations as to why there are so many one hit wonders out there, including people like Julian Lennon. They sign a contract, they got all the publishing rights, they pick what they want, and then you've got to make new material. And it gets kind of tough to live up to your first album.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you said they're cherry picking, they're picking the very best of what you got. They kind of milk you
Yep.
dry. Um, Man, well, that's good counsel. And so I guess when he started Dragon Street, I know you said talking to David would have more information there, but he probably wanted to do the opposite model because I've read that a lot of Austin bands he helped, he really just mentored and got them on the right path. Tripping Daisy is one, of course, that everyone remembers. But
Well, when he was in Austin, he formed a group called Moment Productions, and that grew out of him and the home recordings that he did, the multi-track stuff he did with himself. He started doing demo tapes for bands, local Austin bands that couldn't afford studio time and all the other stuff that went into it. So he started working on that garage business style of producing bands, and then formed Moment Productions when he was doing Pool 333 and doing the things he did there. And then that eventually led to him coming up to Dallas. He was at Planet Dallas, a recording studio here in Dallas. And then he and Dave got together and formed Dragon Street, which is where Trippin' Daisy came from.
very cool. Okay, and I love that you brought up 333 and the multi-track stuff he was doing. Um, so as I told you, the way we got in contact was I had a friend share a video with me. It was Patrick playing in a local Austin studio, playing some songs from 333,
Mm-hmm.
and very cool video. He's so in the moment. He's just vibing and playing his music, and he played Jamaica Resting,
Right?
and the buzz around that was like, whoa, this sounds like LCD Soundsystem's biggest song, Dance Yourself Clean. And I saw a large account on Instagram called Indie Sleaze post about Dance Yourself Clean in the making. They were kind of revisiting that song through the lens of LCD. And they mentioned in the caption, they said this might have been inspired by Patrick Keel of the Pool. And it was just kind of in parentheses. And so I was like, no way, man. Let's give the Pool some credit. So I just went and posted that video, and 2 million views later, the Pool has thousands of new listeners and new fans who want to know so much more about them. And that's why we're here talking. But so I have questions about 333 and all that, but I kind of just to jump to that topic. When did you first hear LCD Sound System's song "Dance Yourself Clean"? The song in question that sounds like Jamaica Resting.
So Patrick, I started helping Patrick with his finances and taking care of him after his divorce. So around 2010, 2011, right when that song came out. I wasn't aware of it, and Patrick and I were doing some different things with his music, trying to position things for licensing and other uses. And when I went online, suddenly I couldn't find Jamaica Resting and some of the other things that had been on YouTube. And when I started looking further, I started finding these references to Dance Yourself Clean and listened to it, and immediately felt like there were very strong similarities there. So I played it for Patrick next time I picked him up and we went out to lunch. And so we started talking about that. We did reach out to LCD Soundsystem, and they were not real responsive to our contact. They essentially said that, if you feel like you've got a case, take us to court. And we weren't in a position to do that. So, Patrick kind of shrugged his shoulders and said, well, glad they made some money off of it. And that was the end of that.
Yeah. And you also said, and I just love every time I hear a story about Patrick, he just had that kind of attitude and spirit that I just people looked up to him and admired him. And I think that's so cool. And I'm so glad we're getting to share his legacy. But you also said he kind of laughed and said, well, he's a DJ, so it makes sense.
Yes, you and I talked about that in an earlier conversation. Patrick and I sent you a piece of music that Patrick had put on a homemade tape for me with him sampling from some radio announcers and so forth on that music.
Well, Ralph, over the years, there was so many things that happened. It's kind of hard to single out just one particular thing.
So Patrick was well aware of sampling and how that goes into things, and how things you hear and really like in your head, how those tunes and rhythms will stay with you and maybe come out later during your creative process. So we did talk about the fact that back in the day when he did 333, I mean, he was getting play in discos in East Coast and in Europe as well. So it's very possible that he did hear that in his DJ days, and it was in the back of his head. We'd like to think that
Yeah.
about him instead of thinking, wow, I'll use this as my rhythm line and then I'll just build a song on top of it.
Right.
But
Yeah. Benefit of the doubt. That's good. That's
yeah,
good.
he
What
was
else can you
never a
do?
fighter. He was never a fighter.
Yeah. What? I mean, tell me more about him. Like he just was a kind soul.
Well, Patrick and I both had a tough childhood.
Hmm.
Our grandfather committed suicide in the mid 50s, and father was a very violent alcoholic. So we suffered a great deal of abuse at his hands until mom divorced him in 1960. So we have a real hard time with bullies.
Hmm.
Both of us are small, and we're not going to win any fights. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
So it just kind of creates a more gentle nature.
That's
I
good.
remember going on road trips with mom and Patrick in the car, and if we ever saw a box terrapin trying to get across the road, Patrick would make mom stop the car. He'd get out of the car. He'd get that terrapin and get him off the road and move him to the other side of the road. So
Yeah.
just a loving soul.
Yeah, he'd love to help people out. Okay. And that's cool because, sometimes those stories go the other way. Sometimes it creates a different type of nature. So a testament to you guys. Well, that's cool. Um, so back to, you said 333. That's how he liked to pronounce it, 333, his debut album.
Yeah, and you know where that came from?
Yeah, I'd
Yes.
love to. Oh, well, 33, a record, right? Record inch?
Yes, the speed that the record plays,
Or the record, yes.
333.
Perfect. Yeah. That's cool. They're and so that was his debut album. It got play in New York and discos. Um, we talked a little bit about Dance It Down. Did you guys ever talk about Dance It Down and its resemblance to West End Girls by the Pet Shop Boys?
No, we never talked about the resemblance of his tunes to anything else.
Okay.
Uh, 333 was the first release with a label. Patrick had done his own underground cassette tapes, Pool 1, Pool 2, Pool 3, and those had gotten him a great deal of following in the underground DJ techno music era, because Brian Eno was one of his role models for the self-recorded music. Um, Todd Rundgren, Stevie Wonder, those were also two people that did multi-track recording with them, playing multiple instruments. They were an influence on him as well in that regard. But Dance It Down was one of those things that was just a very unique mix. If you've seen the video, it received a lot of airplay on MTV on what they call their underground video segment, and was actually top 10 the year that it came out.
Wow.
So that got him a lot of play, and I think all of those little grassroots kind of developmental stages he went through helped launch 333 in a bigger way.
Okay, and that's great. The question I want to ask is, he never followed up 333 with why did he never follow up that album?
Never had the opportunity. The person that signed him with Enigma Records ended up being released, and nobody else that was there really got it, as Patrick would say. Because he'd looked all his life for somebody that would get it. We've talked about his cover bands. He made a living in cover bands, but artistically, he felt like he was getting his hands dirty. He felt like it was below what he wanted to do as an artist. He always wanted to do his own music and create his own form of music. And the things that he had in his head, he had a hard time getting out in music because he's always trying to communicate through other musicians. Patrick was not classically trained. He couldn't write charts. He couldn't write music, and he couldn't read music. So it was all by ear. It was all by heart. He had a pitch perfect ear. He had great sense of rhythm. So he was actually lamenting it to a cousin one day who was coming through Austin, and he said, "What do you need?" And he said, I need a 4-track recorder. And so a cousin took him out and bought him a 4-track recorder. And you've seen the picture of the home studio that I've sent you some while back.
Mhm.
And he created a home studio where he could do his drums, he could do his keyboards, he could do his guitars, he could do bass or lead or whatever he wanted to add to it. He would record music with thunderstorms in the background and other things that he would use to give the production more depth, as it were, more layers.
Yeah.
But record 4 tracks, turn them into one, add three, turn them into one, add,
Yeah.
just repeat until you get it where you want it. So
Mm.
it was a very labor intensive process. But if you don't have somebody with the label that believes in you, you're not going to get album number 2. So he never got that chance.
So interesting. It's always about timing and just and yeah, catching a break. That's so crazy because crazy talented, obviously. Um, I didn't realize that picture where he's sitting but in front of the Korg and he's got some hand drums there. I didn't realize that was his home studio. He's wearing a white jumpsuit with the collar, I think, or it's a one piece. I think is that the photo you're talking about? He's sitting down looking up at the the camera and he's just surrounded by equipment, a few synths and
Yeah. Yeah. I sent that to you the other day, not yesterday, but previously.
yeah, that's I love that picture. That's one of the first pictures I found of him online. And it's just so cool. And it's interesting because the more I read about him, like I looked at some of your Facebook posts and stuff and friends who just sharing memories and stuff. And there's pictures of him where he's just smiling and you can see that big smile and stuff in his personality a bit. And then there's some of those photos like in the home studio and some of the other promo photos he did where he just kind of has like a soul, like his face is more expressionless. But his personality was he seemed like he was pretty lively, yeah. Like was he a jokester? Was he quiet? Was he just very reserved artist? What was he like?
Well, I'm really not the person to talk to about that because, as I said, I was a little brother. He and I spent a lot of time together until he was about 16 and he left home at 16. And we would cross paths periodically. I had a great deal of admiration for what he did with his music, but we were in very different career tracks. We were living in different parts of the country.
Right,
Um, we interacted. Actually, we spent more time together in the last 6 years of his life than we had in the previous 40.
right.
So, circumstance brings it to what it is. But in the situations where I was around him, Patrick loved bringing people together and then kind of being on the sideline and watching things happen.
I love
As
that.
a teacher, when he was at Quad C, Collin County Community College, he put together a project with the Wildflower Festival where his students got to help manage the stages for the musical performers that came in. And so he loved getting the students out there and kind of like an orchestra conductor, everybody had their job and he'd just sit there and watch everybody do their job and watch everybody have a great time interacting with these musicians and just kind of being the conductor.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, that makes a lot of that helps. Um, okay, so let's see. So we talked some of the tracks that you sent me. Like I do love postcards. It's such a cool atmosphere and the the spoken word samples coming in. 1985 really stuck out to me today because it's just such a strong pop tune and I could hear something in his voice. I was like, what does this remind me of? And because it's got the piano, there's
Now,
some
the,
good,
the 1985 cut I sent you
yeah.
was from Good Question.
Oh, that's a cover.
That's a cover
Okay,
of 1985 from McCartney and Wings, and that
got
was
it.
done by Good Question, and that was taken from their demo tape. So Patrick's playing the drums in that, David
Okay.
Denard's playing the bass, and Chris Geppert was the vocalist.
Thank you for stopping me because I was going to make a fool of myself trying to think who I thought it was, but that's Chris Cross's voice. I mean, I thought there was a Freddie Mercury thing. I just like this is a solid voice. This is a great tune. It was a
Oh
cover
yeah,
of Paul McCartney and the Wings. Beautiful. And that's Chris Cross. Wow. I mean, is that music? is 1985 out there? Like, is it online anywhere? Is that do you
That's
know?
a question to ask Paul McCartney, I guess. I don't know if he's
Like,
got it
like
out there anywhere or not, but it's a great Wings tune.
yeah, okay, so I guess yeah, the original's probably got to be out there, but just the cover, like to hear to know that Chris Cross earlier in his lifetime, his artist, he's covered that. I just think that's such a cool thing. Um, and
That demo tape also included Bad Company, um, Can't Get Enough of Your Love,
mm,
and Todd Rundgren's Hello, It's Me.
wow. And you have that demo tape?
I don't have the tape anymore, but Patrick digitized almost all of his music for me before he passed.
Wow.
So we've got all of his work tapes of early forms of the stuff that was on 333. Uh, I've got a wealth of music there that someday we might be able to do something with some of it.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. So along with Darren Bergstein, excuse me, he reissued 333,
Right?
and then Josh, I believe is his name, from Dark Entries Records. They do a lot of
Yes.
reissues, and he reissued the EP, which
Right.
had Jamaica Resting and stuff.
Right.
I had heard that he was working on an archival reissue. Do you know much about that? If there's any more music of Patrick's that's going to come out on vinyl or anything?
I'm not aware of anything, but I do know Josh, and I negotiated that licensing when it happened, just like the one with Derek. So if he wants to do something, I'd be happy to talk with him about it because I think I've got a bigger collection of his music than anybody else does.
Absolutely. Okay, that's good to know. And that makes you don't have to discuss business or anything, but does Patrick's estate get like I just actually you don't even have to answer that question, but I just hope that all the new listeners that have gone to Spotify to play uh, the Pool's music since these recent discoveries and stuff, I hope some of those royalties are benefiting Patrick's estate or anything like that. But it's just great to know that people are listening to him. So
Yes, it is.
yeah,
And that's the thing that would make Patrick happy, just knowing that people are listening to his music and enjoying his music. He'd dance around and kick up his heels.
that's so great. Okay, very cool. Um, let's talk about because you mentioned Stevie Wonder, Todd Rundgren, some influences, of course. One I didn't expect, but which you could have seen from the name is uh, reggae and dub because he calls it Jamaica Resting, and so I may be reading into it here, but that's what I want to ask you because one of his students who talked to me online said, yeah, his biggest influences are reggae and dub, and so I started to listen to like I just listened to Jamaica Resting and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I can see that. So is that true? Was he a big reggae fan? Old school reggae?
Yes, yes, yes. He was a very big reggae fan, and Bob Marley,
Mm.
just really into that. He had a lot of Jamaican art that was, in his possessions that during the lean years that we ended up having to turn into cash to help pay some medical bills and things. But he had a great appreciation for that. His first love, Rolling Stones.
Huh.
All the way, baby. He was a big time Rolling Stones fan. He thought British rock and British music was the bomb, and that American music sucked eggs. He didn't have, and so that was one of our little back and forth things. Little brother didn't have any real class or taste because I was getting into Chicago and Yes and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and all this other, he called it foo-foo music, and he really liked the stuff. But I redeemed myself with him in the 80s when he found out I liked Weather Report and was really getting into them.
Wow. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had just recently done a story about Jocko
Oh,
Pastorius, and so
so Patrick had a story about being down in Florida uh, at a nightclub and was watching everybody set up and so forth, and some guy in a knit cap on his head and other things setting up, and he's thinking this guy's a roadie or he's one of the band techies or something or other. And when Weather Report came out to perform, and here he is on the bass, he was just like dropping his jaw because that was the first time he saw Jocko play, and had a great deal of respect for him. I remember him very animatedly telling me this story about a guy who was so good that he took all the frets off his bass so that he could have more tones and notes and things that he could play to do what he wanted to do.
Exactly. Totally changed the image and expectations of a bass player. And wow, that's so cool
Oh
that
yeah.
he saw him live and didn't even know it was him until he started playing. That is cool. Um, okay, so yeah, reggae and dub and um, back kind of on more influences, Place in the Sun, which I love, such a cool tune, and that is on 333. I've heard people refer to it as a white boogie tune. I definitely heard some really cool rap influences in it. It reminded me of The
Right.
Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and you referred to it as a rap tune. So I guess I was just curious if Patrick ever talked about, old rap, new rap, what any thoughts he had there on that genre.
We didn't really talk about all of the other genres as much as I would say he and I talked a lot about that song. I had visions for a long, long time of somebody doing a video with that song. Uh, we grew up in Dallas, Texas, the empire of appearances. Everybody's after money and show and flash, but everybody's selling out to get it. And so when he's talking about, I mean, he even had the lines in there like, don't dare settle for the minimum wage.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that us youngsters were told all the time was, you start working at minimum wage, but don't stay there. Don't settle for it. You got to move up. Well, if you move up, you make other sacrifices to move up. So his 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, and don't give in or you'll have a heart attack.
Yeah.
There's just so many people that have that kind of structure or struggle. And structurally, that's where I said it was rap because he's not really singing
Hmm.
with a singing voice. He's more speaking than anything else.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Vanilla Ice took any motivation from hearing that Dallas boy rapping back in the '80s, but there it
Uh,
is.
that's so cool. Yeah, well, that's cool to know, to think more about that and think that his background kind of influenced that, and it was an anthem to champion artists and doing what you love and not chasing the dollar so hard, but doing that's so, man, what a
Find your
guy.
place in the sun.
Find your place in the sun. Yeah. Well, that's great that he made, okay, so he was on MTV. That was a top 10 video, Dance It Down, which did have a video. I've seen that video. I love that video. Um, and it just kind of stopped there, I guess, the momentum. Like Enigma, the guy left, and nobody else saw the potential to pick it back up. I just can't believe it.
And Patrick didn't have the, let's say, the drive and the energy to try to make it happen again. I mean, he'd put years into courting that relationship with that person. He'd gotten to know Paul Rogers with Bad Company, and Paul had done a lot of things to help introduce him to different people to try to help him out. So, he'd done a lot of work. He'd gotten it to that point, and then it just fell apart. And when you're a pioneer, uh, you get kind of tired of getting all of those arrows,
Yeah.
because you're different. You're not like everybody else. And it's like he got to perform at Tango here in Dallas. He got to perform at the Start Club. But even then, people were saying, I love the music, but watching you perform is kind of like, what is it?
Really?
People just really didn't get it because they don't get that, hey, all the other music you're hearing, he did. He can't do it all at the same time. So even with 333, the label made him get other musicians who would learn the parts so that they could play on stage and perform those numbers.
Got it. Okay. And so he did get to tour. I don't know if I'd say tour, but he got to play that album live a handful of times.
He played a lot of the songs off of that album live, yes.
Yeah. Do you know if he had a favorite, like a favorite song he ever created? Like one of his favorite, do you know what one of his favorite songs was?
If he did, he never told me. Patrick and I are both the same. If you start asking us for favorites or best, we struggle.
Yeah.
We really struggle because we love so many different genres. It's like I love Bocelli and a lot of his opera and what he does. I love jazz. I
Hmm.
love rock. I like progressive rock. There are a lot of forms of music that I enjoy. No way I can pick a favorite song. And I know from his creative process, there were several songs that he really enjoyed and others that he was kind of dismissive about, because he said you've got to get through a lot of the stuff to get to the nuggets,
Totally.
and that's really the way it works.
You've got exactly. You've got to go through quantity to get to the quality. It's the same
Yep.
thing for me as writing. The more you get, the better your result you're going to get. So that makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Um, cool. Let's see. I think, man, that's. I think a lot of what we covered, honestly, is so much that I wanted to hear, and it just makes me respect Patrick more. Does he? It sounds like he was okay with never quite breaking into the mainstream. Like he knew he did what he did, and he probably didn't know that he would be rediscovered, reissued later in life, but he wasn't like tore up about that the way his career had gone.
If he was tormented, it was not anything he talked about.
Yeah.
The thing that I saw was that he shifted gears. Whenever he had those setbacks, he shifted gears. And when things changed and he went to Quad C, he was able to get uh, the certification so that he could teach at Quad C based on how many years he'd been in his profession. So he went to work at Quad C. When the new chancellor came into those college systems and said, nope, we're not going to accept those people anymore. We only want degreed people. He was kind of, brushed aside. Students fought for him. Parents of students fought for him. They lost. And so instead of him, throwing a fit, like I said, not a fighter, he found a job at MediaTek with the help of a friend of his named Kerry Crafton,
Hmm.
who was an engineer on 333 and a lot of the music and things that Patrick had been involved with. And so he went from teaching at one school to teaching in another school. And he was always teaching about the industry and
Mm.
about how to get work in the industry and how to work within it and leverage it. And he was becoming much more outspoken about being self produced, just as he had done, because the technology was changing so rapidly with computers and software programming and the things you can do. And now look at how much talent we've got where kids are doing everything all by themselves on there. Look at Eric Johnson. And Eric was a musician that Patrick met in Austin when Eric was 19 years old. I've got pictures of them together from years, and have gone to concerts with Eric playing where we've gotten to go backstage and they've reunited. It's been fun to see them with their friendship. But Eric is a classic example of for the most part, controlling his own publishing, being self-produced, and working with the label in partnership instead of being owned by his label. And it's given him a lot of freedom in what he's been able to do and what he's been able to experience. So a lot of his students have been able to do the same thing.
Wow. So yeah, Patrick was just ahead of his time in a lot of the things that he did. And it's actually incredible to learn that he made the music he did, not knowing how to read music or all by ear and stuff. That's amazing.
I
Um,
remember being at a I remember being at a performance. I won't say where it was because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but they were doing Birdland, and it was a very well intentioned, very great group. And I turned to him at one point and I said, "Your pitch is off a little bit." And he said, "Yeah, and the timing signature's off, but we won't say anything." So he did have that ear for it.
yeah, he knew. Cool. Um, I guess I was curious too, like of all he played in a handful of Austin bands. That was another question that people had asked, like what bands did he play in? So he was in a lot of cover bands. There was Good Question, or was it Good Question?
Yes, Good Question was the last cover band he was in, and Zeus was the one he was in before that.
Zeus, and then any other, Austin legends or Austin bands he played in that you remember the names of?
I'm not aware of. I do know that he did a short stint of playing the drums for the Bubble Puppy,
Yeah.
which was a band here in Texas that had their little Sweet Smoking Sassafras or Hot Smoking Sassafras hit that they did. And he played with them for a while to help. Most of what he did to support himself in Austin was he was a chef. He ended up working at a restaurant in Austin called Bloom's, and he became an executive chef. So
Was he self-taught a chef as well?
No, you have to go in and do the apprenticeship, and you have to work under some good folks and be a line cook and be a prep chef.
He
You
went through
have to
the
do
whole
a lot of
thing.
things, which he didn't really enjoy.
Yeah.
But once he got to the chef position, he really enjoyed that for the years he did it.
Gosh, that's so cool. So, okay, and one of the photos you had sent said Patrick in Cairns. Um, do you remember that he had a? Did he do a lot of? Was he a big traveler too, or did he have any
Um,
international music experiences?
well, he didn't have any international experiences, but when he and Debbie were married, they did travel a good bit to Spain and France and really enjoyed those times and getting out there. And that was in the Dragon Street record days. So he may have been making some contacts there. But, one of the things that you may want to do, I'm still in contact with David Denard,
Yeah.
who was his partner with Dragon Street, and again was in multiple bands with Patrick, including when he was living in Colorado and had his band Dr. Broccoli, and
Dr. Broccoli.
other stints. So
Got some stories.
he stayed busy for a lot of years playing music.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah,
And
that picture that I sent you of Patrick sitting on the back stoop playing
yeah.
a dobro,
Uh-huh.
that was from the Colorado era when they were living in Denver.
Okay. Yeah, that's such a sweet picture. What kind of photo is that? Like,
Well, it was a black and white, and
oh,
my grandmother took it to Lawhead Photographers here in Dallas, and they colorized it.
cool. That makes sense. Yeah, that's a nice touch to it. And then this other photo, this one that I just love, the black and white one where he's got his hands on his his head. What's that one? Do you know much about the background on that photo?
Well, that was in one of those photo booths where you got the
Oh,
strip of
of course.
pictures, and he was just being a goof.
Just
He
having
was very
fun.
good at being goofy.
Yeah,
We both are.
cool. Okay. Well, man, Mike, I mean, is there anything else you would want to share? Such a wealth of information you shared, stuff I didn't even expect to hear. Is there anything else you'd want to say about Patrick or anything? Any other memories you have? I mean, I'm
Well,
sure you have so many.
like I said, I think he would be delighted to know that people are listening to his music, enjoying his music, that people that have never heard it before are getting to enjoy it now. Uh, you know, it's kind of like some of the conversations my wife and I have had about his music. His Jamaica Resting has been licensed several times since his passing. In every case, it was one of those, we knew nothing about it. We weren't lobbying for it. It's just somebody contacted us and say, hey, we're a fashion house in Europe and we want to use this for our spring fashion line or whatever. And so it's been very interesting to see that, the music of somebody that was so unknown and undiscovered is still being appreciated and still being enjoyed. And that to me is worth a lot.
Gosh, dang it. That's so cool, Mike. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much again for uh for your time and stuff. I guess I was going to show you too. I have one of the this is the EP or one of the EPs actually. Where did we go wrong? Let's go
Yeah.
here and anything else I can get on vinyl from of his music. I'm looking forward to it if it ever happens.
Is that one of the red ones or is that a regular colored disc?
No, this is an original um, pressing. It's got the Enigma
Yeah.
label, but yeah. Did he press any red ones back in the day?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. I guess I haven't
Yeah.
really.
I guess I'll have to break into my collection and take some photos and send those to you so that you'll
Yeah,
know a
please
little
do.
bit more of what's out there. He also worked with Allison Rogers when he was in Austin.
Uh-huh.
Produced some stuff and music for her when he was with Moment Productions. Allison went on to write "You're Not from Texas" with
Okay.
Lyle Lovett,
Oh, wow.
and so it's you never know the people you're investing in. You never know where they're going to go, and that's one of the neat things about some of the people that he worked with. Tommy Taylor has told me stories when I've been at Eric Johnson shows about musicians that he's met or studio techs that he's met that Patrick had mentored when he was at Quad Seer Media Tech.
Uh-huh.
So it's really cool to know that things are going out forward from what he did and what he invested in.
Yeah, so many lives I obviously was able to influence from the teaching uh, gig. That's so cool. Okay. Well,
Yep.
Mike, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much again for taking the time to share all this and do the interview. I'll be sure to send it to you when it's ready and excited to get more information about the pool out there. So thank you again.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Okay, take care, Mike.
You too.
All right, bye bye.
Bye bye.